ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كلنا آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة والعلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. ونشهد بما شهد الله به وأشهد الله على ذلك وأستودع الله هذه الشهادة وهي لي عند الله وديعة أسأل حفظها حتى يتوفاني عليها. إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. قل اللهم مالك الملك اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء تعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. تولج الليل في النهار وتولج النهار في الليل وتخرج الحي من الميت وتخرج الميت من الحي وترزق من تشاء بغير حساب. رحمن الدنيا والآخرة ورحيمهما تعطي من تشاء منهما وتمنع من تشاء. أنت ترحمنا فارحمنا رحمة تغنينا بها عن رحمة من سواك. اللهم اقضي عنا الدين واغننا من الفقر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. وأحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا عظيم السلطان يا قديم الإحسان يا دائم النعم يا كثير الجود يا واسع العطاء يا خفي اللطف صنع يا حليم لا يعجل. صل يا ربي على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم وارض عن الصحابة أجمعين. اللهم لك الحمد شكرا ولك المن فضلا وأنت ربنا حقا ونحن عبيدك رقا وأنت لم تزل لذلك أهلا. يا ميسر كل عسير ويا جابر كل كسير ويا صاحب كل فريد ويا مغني كل فقير ويا مقوي كل ضعيف ويا مأمن كل مخيف. يسر علينا كل عسير فتيسر العسير عليك يسير. اللهم يا من لا يحتاج إلى البيان والتفسير حاجاتنا كثير وأنت عالم بها وخبير. اللهم إني أخاف منك وأخاف ممن يخاف منك وأخاف ممن لا يخاف منك. اللهم بحق من يخاف منك نجنا ممن لا يخاف منك. اللهم بحق سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم احسنا بعينك التي لا تنام لا يرام وارحمنا بقدرتك علينا فلا نهلك وأنت ثقتنا ورجاؤنا. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين عدد خلقه رضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. اللهم إنا نسألك زيادة في الدين وبركة في العمر وصحة في الجسد وسعة في الرزق قبل الموت وشهادة عند الموت ومغفرة بعد الموت وعفوا عند الحساب وأمانا من العذاب ونصيبا من الجنة وارزقنا النظر إلى وجهك الكريم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله. حتى خلق القرآن الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون. فتعالى الله الملك الحق لا إله إلا هو رب العرش الكريم. إلها آخر لا برهان له به إنما حسابه عند ربه إنه لا يفلح الكافرون. وقل رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون. يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. والله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. سلام على نوح في العالمين إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت أشرك وأشهد ملائكة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك إنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد ملائكة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك إنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك. أشهدك وأشهد ملائكة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك إنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد ملائكة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك إنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافي مزيدا. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافي مزيدا. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافي مزيدا. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا بالإسلام دينا وسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت هو رب العرش العظيم. إلا هو عليه توكلت هو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت هو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت هو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت هو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت هو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت هو رب العرش العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. 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 صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم إني أسألك من فجاءة الخير وأعوذ بك من فجاءة الشر. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت عليك توكلت وأنت رب العرش العظيم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة أنت آخذ من ناصيتها إن ربي على صراط مستقيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث من عذابك استجيب. أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي ولا إلى أحد من خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وقهر الرجال. اللهم إني أسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة دائما في ديني ودنياي وأهلي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتي وأمن روعاتي. اللهم احفظني من بين يدي ومن خلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي ومن فوقي وأعوذ بعظمتك أن أغتال من تحتي. اللهم أنت خلقتني وتهديني وأنت تطعمني وأنت تسقيني وأنت تميتني وأنت تحييني وأنت على كل شيء قدير. أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وعلى كلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم بك أصبحنا وبك أمسينا وبك نحيا وبك نموت وعليك نتوكل وإليك النشور. أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبركته وهداه. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم وخير ما فيه وخير ما قبله وخير ما بعده. وأعوذ بك من شر هذا اليوم وشر ما فيه وشر ما بعده. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك. لك الحمد ولك الشكر على ذلك. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ذلك كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ذلك كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ذلك كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ذلك كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ذلك كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ذلك كلماته. خلق في السماء سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. سبحان الله عدد ما بين ذلك. سبحان الله عدد ما هو خالق. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في السماء. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الحمد لله عدد ما بين ذلك. الحمد لله عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما بين ذلك. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما هو خالق. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في السماء. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الله أكبر عدد ما بين ذلك. الله أكبر عدد ما هو خالق. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما بين ذلك. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة 1000 مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له عدد كل ذرة 1000 مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة 1000 مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله صلاة وسلام دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة 1000 مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله صلاة وسلام دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة 1000 مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله صلاة وسلام دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة 1000 مرة في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقه فضل نفسه سنة عشر من ذلك كلماته.
Ready to go? Should we start? Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammadin ashraf al-anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walahu al-yawm al-din. نويت تعلم التعليم والتذكر والتذكير ونفع الانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث وتمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته قربه والدعاء به سبحانه وتعالى. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله الله أكبر لا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. عدد القلب كتب واكتب بدل أبد من دفع الداخلين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من أن أدن وأدن وزن وزن وأدن وأظلم وجه رجل علي. اللهم أغثنا بالعلم وزينا بالعلم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وجملنا بالعافية يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. So we're picking up where we left off in the book The Complete Summons, in the introduction of The Complete Summons by Imam Haddad. We mentioned previously, yesterday, we talked about what da'wah or calling to Allah, what it means, how it is about putting your mind to use to think about how to move people from their current state of heedlessness or not being Muslim or otherwise to a state that is closer to Islam or closer to Allah Ta'ala. So if they're not Muslim, you bring them to Islam. If they're heedless, you bring them to a state of remembrance of Allah Ta'ala. If they're already remembering Allah Ta'ala, you bring them to a state where they're even higher than that, where they're, improving on that state of remembrance with more ihsan or more work, for example. We spoke about how the Prophet ﷺ was commanded by Allah Ta'ala to call to him. He was told what he said in the book, in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'idati hasana." So he told the Prophet ﷺ to call to my path, or call to me. And even though he's talking to the Prophet ﷺ directly, right, it's really a commandment for his entire ummah. So every single Muslim in the entire ummah is responsible for calling to Allah Ta'ala. But the extent of that responsibility will vary for each individual, okay, depending on their skills, their abilities, their time, and their place. The Prophet ﷺ in a hadith, he said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Relay from me, even if it's just a single verse. So he also, in this hadith, commanded everyone in the ummah to relay the message of God. But again, when he said even just a single verse, what he's saying here is that khalas, like the extent that you can. Even if all you can do is relay just a single verse, even if all you can do is, show good character, which is really relaying verses, but in a non-spoken way, through your attributes, through your interactions, even if all you can do is smile at someone and be good to them, that goes a long way and is considered a form of da'wah. So we spoke about how everyone should be involved in da'wah and how it should be done with wisdom, okay? How it should be done with wisdom and with good speech. So, like we said, calling to Allah Ta'ala and the science of da'wah is in fact a science, right? It has techniques, it has principles. If one were to go against those techniques and principles, even if they have a good intention, they might actually cause more harm than good. Just like how, for example, someone who's untrained goes into a kitchen, tries to cook. They see a chef, right, in their business, and they think, khalas, like a chef, they just throw some things in a pot, put over a fire, stir some things in there, throw some spices. It's a meal. I'll do the same thing. They might try to emulate the chef and end up cooking something terrible. It doesn't taste good at all, right? Or they look at, people practicing martial arts and just think, oh, these people are just, smacking each other around, wrestling on some mats. Anyone can do that. And they try and do it again with their friends or something, and they hurt themselves, right? Or they get themselves into problems. And so it's easy when you look at someone performing something, it's easy to think that it's, that you can do it too, or that it's something that you can just, pick up and do without any sort of training. But it's only when you speak to that individual, okay, who's mastered that craft, or someone who's been trained in it, that you realize that specific craft, right, has principles, has techniques, requires study to perform well in. Whether it's, something like cooking or martial arts. And likewise, even da'wah, calling to Allah Ta'ala, is a science. It's a science, has principles, has techniques, and it has, things that you have to keep in mind in order to actually benefit people through it and not cause more harm than good, even though you might have a good intention. And we talked about as well, lastly, about how calling to Allah Ta'ala it is basically the purpose of the prophets. The prophets were sent for this specific reason, to call people to God, to call them to Allah Ta'ala, and to remind them of the responsibilities they have in maintaining a positive relationship with their Lord to enter paradise. And so for people to emulate the prophets completely, they have to be involved somewhat in calling to Allah Ta'ala and da'wah. They have to be involved somewhat in calling to Allah and da'wah, and it's from complete emulation of the Prophet ﷺ for one to have a sense of mercy, a feeling of mercy and love for creation, to want them to become closer to God and to enter Islam if they're not already Muslim. That's just part of emulating the Prophet ﷺ. So emulating the Prophet ﷺ was not just in speech, it's not just in how you dress, it's not just in how you pray, right? It's not just in the words you use and the way you hold your siwak and everything. All that is important, but likewise, the feeling you have in your heart towards the rest of creation, okay, towards the rest of humanity, to want good for them, and ultimately to want them to enter Islam, is also part of emulating the Prophet ﷺ. And for that reason, all scholars and pious of the past were really, really earnest in making sure they're involved in da'wah in some way, shape, or form. Whether it was teaching people, feeding people, spreading the message of God, whatever it was, they were involved in some way, shape, or form to emulate the Prophet ﷺ and to take on that mantle of spreading the message of God that these prophets left behind after they moved on to the next life. Okay, so we left off in the book, and the brothers are going to read now.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam radiyallahu ankum. To call the people to God, to his path, his religion, and his obedience is the want of the prophets and messengers. This is what God commanded them to do and the reason he sent them. This is what he enjoined upon them and exhorted them to do. And it is this that their heirs, the practicing scholars and virtuous saints among the be-living servants of God follow and emulate them. At all time and under all circumstances, they persisted in calling the people to the path of God and to his obedience, with both their words and deeds, with full ardor and zeal, seeking the good pleasure of God and compassion for his servants, desiring his recompense and his emulation of the Messenger of God, and blessings and peace be upon him. He said, may God's blessings and peace be upon him. He who invites to guidance receives a reward equal to that of those who follow him, without this diminishing their rewards in any way. And he who invites to error, this burden of sin is equal to that of those follow him without his diminishing their burden in any way. And he said, May God's blessings and peace be upon him. He who guides to an act of goodness is just like he who performs it. There are numerous well-known verses of the Quran, traditions of the Prophet, and the companions detailing the merits of calling the people to God in his way.
So he's speaking now about, again, he's speaking about the virtues of calling to Allah Ta'ala. He mentions two very important hadith. The author mentions two important hadith. He's mentioned the first one. The person who calls to good or to guidance, he gets the reward of the person who follows them. So someone, for example, teaches someone how to pray, right? Teaches someone, calls them to Islam, and that person becomes Muslim, for example, or, goes from a state of heedlessness to be remembering Allah Ta'ala. Okay, that person starts getting rewarded, right? They're starting to pray, they're starting to fast, they're starting to be good and practice what they learn. The teacher now, the person that pointed them to this good thing, will get rewarded as well for what that person does. And Allah is merciful, He's very generous, so it doesn't diminish the reward of the person who is acting. So person A taught person B something, person B starts acting upon it and gets rewarded for it. Person A starts getting rewarded for it too, as just like person B, right? For the same actions person B is doing. Why? Because he was a source of that goodness. He was a source of that goodness. He was a source of that person learning. And it doesn't diminish from person B's reward. They both get the same amount of reward for the actions that person B does. Similarly, if someone does something bad, someone teaches someone a bad thing, okay, a sin or something else bad, and that person starts acting upon it, okay, all right, that person is maybe accruing sin. The person who taught him that sinful thing will also be accruing sin, right? From the actions of that individual as well, for the actions of that individual as well. So basically, it comes down to to summarize this. The next hadith says, the person who points to goodness is like the one who's doing it, right? So similarly, the person who points to bad is like the one who's doing it. So someone who guides someone to good or bad, they participate in the same reward or punishment that person ends up getting for their actions, which is very profound. Why? Because imagine someone, someone, for example, teaches a child. Imagine you just teach a child the Fatiha. Okay, you teach a child the Fatiha. That child, through the course of their life, will recite the Fatiha how many times in Salah? Every single day. How many years will they live? There's 17 rak'ahs of Salah they have to pray every day, right? 2 for Fajr, 4 for Dhuhr, that's 6, right? 4 for Asr, that's 10, 3 for Maghrib, that's 13, 4 for Isha, that's 17, right? They have to recite the Fatiha 17 times every single day in Salah, right? And then they might live to be what? 50, 60, 70 years old. And just speak about you teaching them the Fatiha, how much reward are you getting? And you're just staying at home. Like, you're praying on your own, you're doing your own thing, but you're getting reward, right, from that person's prayer that you taught. So what if you taught a class, right? What if you taught someone how to pray completely from scratch? It's a lot of reward that people can obtain. And for that reason, people are so earnest to spread the message of God, because there's a lot of opportunity for reward. There's a lot of opportunity for reward, and there's a lot of opportunity there when you get this reward to elevate your rank with Allah Ta'ala. And he says that there's a lot of other hadith and ayat that are mentioned the virtues of calling to Allah Ta'ala, but this is suffice, the ones that he's mentioned so far. Continue.
Furthermore, all verses and traditions concerned with acquiring and disseminating knowledge, the merits of counseling and reminding, and even the merits of fighting in the way of God, as well as enjoining good and forbidding evil, are included in the merits of calling to God. Exalted be He and His way, for these are all various kinds and subdivisions of it. He who neglects...
Yeah, so he's saying now Every single hadith or ayah you've ever read that speaks about the reward or virtues of learning or teaching, of reminding people about Allah Ta'ala, of fighting in the way of God, right? Of spreading the truth, of spreading the good and commanding people to good and telling them to leave things that are evil. All of the reward in all these things and more are considered part of da'wah or calling to Allah Ta'ala. It comes back to what we said yesterday, that calling to Allah Ta'ala or da'wah isn't exclusive to just getting on the minbar and speaking or giving a class, right? It comes in a lot of shapes and forms. The Prophet ﷺ, he was surrounded by companions. Okay? He was surrounded by companions, and a lot of companions. Of those companions, only a handful were people who were considered scholars or muftis. Okay? Only a handful were considered people of scholars or muftis. So what did the rest do? Were they just, chilling at home, doing nothing? No, they spread the message of God. The question is how they spread it if they weren't scholars or muftis. They spread it because there were people who had a sincere love for creation, and they wanted to spread the message of God in the way they knew best, which was, through their akhlaq. They would go into communities with good character and attract people to God because of what they were like, what they were, how they were, whether they were farmers, okay, or businessmen who would trade people and be honest with them in their trade, or even poets who would, say beautiful things. The point is, the talents that Allah gave them individually, okay, they would take those and use it, right, in spreading the message of Allah Ta'ala, and they were successful in that. So anything you can do to help people improve in their relationship with Allah Ta'ala, whether it's becoming Muslim if they're not Muslim, or practicing if they're Muslim and not practicing, or practicing even better if they're Muslim and already practicing, anything you can do falls under the umbrella of da'wah. Go ahead.
He who neglects to call to God in his religion while qualified and able to do so unopposed is included in the threats preferred against those who withhold the guidance and clear signs that God has sent down. And these are indeed severe threats, catastrophic punishments, and utter disparagement from God, who says, "Exalted we have sent down after we have made it clear for the people in the book. They will be cursed by God and by those who curse." And he says, "Exalted be he. Those who withhold that which God has sent down of the book and sell it for a cheap price, those shall eat fire, and their beliefs up to, so how patiently will they endure the fire?"
So now he's talking about what happens if you don't participate in da'wah. Okay, you've been given this message of Islam. You've been given, to some degree, knowledge of Allah, of this religion and of the Prophet ﷺ. And now, what happens if someone doesn't, comes short in spreading it or trying their best to serve the community or the ummah? What happens then? He says this person falls into the category that Allah Ta'ala talks about in the verses where he talks about punishment for those who hide his message, okay, or don't spread it to others. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالْهُدَى مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا بَيَّنَّاهُ لِلنَّاسِ فِي الْكِتَابِ أُولَٰئِكَ يَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّاعِنُونَ. Really, those who hide or are silent about what Allah Ta'ala has revealed in terms of guidance and clarity, after Allah Ta'ala has spread it to people and clarified to people in the books or in the book that He's revealed, those people, Allah has cursed them. Allah has cursed them. When Allah curses someone, what He means is He's discarded them. Like they're cast away far from Him. So He's saying people who, they hide the message of God. Like Allah Ta'ala has revealed to His prophets over time various books, right? He revealed to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam the Torah. He revealed to Sayyidina Dawud alayhi salam the Zabur. He revealed to Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam the Injil. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the Quran. These books came down, right, as revelation for humanity to benefit from and to use to prepare for the next life. People might hide these, What does it mean to hide it? As in, they don't want it to spread to other people. Khalas, they'll change it, they'll hide it, they'll rip it up, whatever they want to do with it, right? Point is, they prevent it from being spread, right, after Allah has brought revelation through the prophets to humanity. These people have a severe torment waiting for them, okay? Have a severe torment waiting for them, severe punishment. And part of that punishment is that they will be cursed by Allah Ta'ala. They'll be cast far away from Him. Okay, they'll be forgotten by God and far from His mercy. And He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَيَشْتَرُونَ بِهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا أُولَٰئِكَ مَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ إِلَّا النَّارَ تمام فَمَا أَصْبَرَهُمْ عَلَى النَّارِ. So he's saying those that are silent about what Allah Ta'ala has revealed in the book, right? Those that are silent about what Allah Ta'ala has revealed in the book, right? So for example, let me give you an example, right? Someone, someone, right, knows, for example, that a certain thing is haram. All right, he knows that a certain thing is haram. Okay, he's been taught, he's read the Quran, or the Hadith, or something. He's been taught that this X thing is haram. Okay, he finds himself in a situation, right, where it's better for him in terms of dunya, right, to not tell people that X thing is haram. All right, does that make sense? So, for example, maybe he learns that a certain, way to make money is haram. He knows that this certain way to make money is haram. Okay, but he finds a good business opportunity. He's going to make some money. Okay, and he finds people, customers and clients and partners who can help him in this money-making business scheme or business, but he doesn't tell them it's haram. So he participates with them, and they all go and they make money, and they're all, doing this haram thing together. This is someone who is basically silent or hiding the message of God, right? He knows it's wrong. He's not telling others, right? That he sees in front of him doing it, okay? Or even worse, for example, right? Or just as bad, someone comes to him and asks him, hey, I want to make money in this way. Is it haram or halal? And the guy doesn't tell him that it's haram, right? So silence about what Allah has revealed to prophets can either be literal silence, someone's asked and they don't clarify to someone, or it could be someone sees someone doing something wrong and they don't say anything. Okay? In either case, they're hiding the message of God, right? And Allah Ta'ala says that they're hiding the message of God, right? And they're buying, okay, with their silence, something that is very trivial. Okay, what does that mean? So, he thinks he's going to benefit or prosper in this world by staying silent about what Allah Ta'ala commanded, right? This person comes and is asking about this way to make money, and he's like, I won't tell him that it's haram because he wants to make money too, right? Or participate with him, right? So he's like, like he's basically selling his religion for profit in this world, for money in this world, right? Allah's saying this person, they've bought something very trivial. You've sold your religion, which is priceless, for something that is just, a few dollars of the dunya, right? And he says, these people, the fire will come, they will be eating fire in the next life. So fire will enter their bellies, and basically saying they'll be tormented and punished in the next life, okay? They'll be tormented and punished in the next life. Go ahead.
God has taken oaths and pledges from those to whom He gave His book, His knowledge, and His wisdom, that they shall call His servants to these and make them clear to them. As He says, exalted be He, when God took the pledge of those who had been given the book, that you shall make it clear to the people and not conceal it. But they threw it behind their backs and sold it for a cheap price. Evil is that which they sell. And the messenger of God, may God's blessings and peace be upon him, said, he who, when asked about knowledge, withholds it, would be bridled with a bridle of fire by God on Judgment Day. Now, if the question is asked with the tongue that speaks, the situation is obvious. Yet a question asked with the tongue of one's condition is not that far from being equally obvious.
So now he's saying people have, Allah Ta'ala took an oath from humanity to spread His message. With أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ لِتُبَيِّنُنَّهُ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَكْتُمُونَهُ فَنَبَذُوهُ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ وَاشْتَرَوْا بِهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا فَبِئْسَ مَا يَشْتَرُونَ. Allah took from those who were given the book or the message that they have to clarify it to people, to humanity, and to not hide it or be silent about it. But then they did the opposite of that. They threw it behind their backs, and they bought in exchange for this message of God, trivial and cheap things of the dunya. And Allah is saying that what they did, that they made a terrible decision, right? What they bought essentially with their religion, right? The trivialities of the dunya, the things of the dunya that are cheap, right? That was a terrible decision for them. They did a terrible transaction. Okay, so Allah has taken from humanity this pledge, right? That they will spread the message that they were given by the prophets. They will spread the message they were given by the prophets, and doing otherwise is going against the pledge. And the Prophet says in this hadith, the person who is asked about a piece of knowledge and hides it, Allah will, he said in the in the transition, Allah will bridle them with a bridle of fire on the Day of Judgment. So you can say bridle, you can say muzzle as well, if you guys know what a muzzle is. Right? A muzzle is something you put over an animal's mouth so they can't, make sounds or bite or move their mouth, right? So for example, a dog is muzzled, okay? So it doesn't bark, it doesn't bite anything. A horse is bridled, okay? Something's put over its mouth so, it can't move its mouth freely. So someone is asked something about their religion and they know the answer, right? And they stay silent on purpose, not relaying it to this individual. Okay? This, right? This this leads to someone in the next life being punished by being muzzled with fire. They were silent in this world about spreading the message of God. Allah will punish them for their silence in the next life. And a question can come in two ways. Okay, a question can come in two ways. The first way a question can come is literally a question. Someone comes and asks you something. Okay, someone comes and asks you something. What's the ruling of this? Can I do this? How do I do this? Right? But a question can also come in the form of someone's behavior. If someone comes, right, and you see them praying improperly, okay, they never asked you how to pray, but them praying improperly in front of you is essentially them telling you, look, I don't know how to pray, teach me, right? I don't know how to pray and teach me. So a question can either come through articulation or by seeing someone's state, and their state is basically telling you, look, I need to be taught. I don't know this thing, please teach me, okay? And in both cases, staying silent can lead to sin, okay? There's a famous story of the grandchildren of the Prophet ﷺ, Hassan and Hussein. They one day witnessed an old man making wudu improperly. Okay? The old man was making wudu improperly. All right? And they were just kids. This was an old man. All right? And they knew, if you go to this old man and you tell him, hey, you're doing it wrong, do it X, Y, Z, do it this way, he wouldn't accept what they have to say probably. Because they're just children. He's an old man, mashallah. Okay? So here, they observed this man's behavior. He was making wudu improperly. He was basically telling them through his actions, look, I don't know how to make wudu properly. Teach me. Okay, I need to be taught. But they knew if they go approach him directly, he's not going to accept it. Okay, which is often the case. A lot of times, if someone behaves in front of you in a way that tells you they need to be taught, approaching it directly, right, might not be the most conducive or the best way to make them understand. Okay, some people, even though they don't know, all right, they don't appreciate being told how to do something, even though they don't know. So what does the Hassan and Hussein do? They did the following. They went to the old man and they were like, old man, or sir, me and my brother here, we're having a competition to see who can make wudu better, and we would like you to be the judge. Okay, so here now they're smart, right? They're not telling the gentleman, hey, your wudu is terrible, right? Like, plus they're kids and he's an old man, that's rude, But they're like, we're having a competition to see who can make wudu better. Please be the judge. And who taught them how to make wudu? The Prophet ﷺ, right? Their grandfather, Prophet ﷺ, they learned from him directly how to make wudu. So the first person, in the Hassan, starts making wudu, just like how the Prophet ﷺ taught him. Okay? Exactly like that. All right? And the old man's watching. this child make wudu perfectly, like the Prophet ﷺ. Then his brother comes, Sayyidina Hussein comes, radiallahu anhu, and makes wudu again, just like how the Prophet ﷺ taught him, perfectly. Okay? And they both made wudu perfectly. And this old man looks at both of their wudus and observes it. And he says, he can't, they're both of them made wudu beautifully. And he realizes his wudu is wrong. He realizes his wudu is wrong. So, the first thing is, when we see people who are in need of help or in need of teaching or something, the first thing is to always remember that there are conducive ways to teach them, and there are ways that are not conducive, ways that can actually make people not want to hear what you're going to say. So being rude, being impolite, okay, being abrasive, all these things can actually make people not want to learn or hear from you what you have to say, even though they might not know any better. So to be wise and to be beautiful in how you relay information to individuals is very important. Okay, just how the story demonstrated. So being creative and being wise in how to relay information to people is part of da'wah. It's part of da'wah. And the hadith that the Prophet mentioned when he says that the person who's asking about the religion or about knowledge and hides it, Allah will bridle them or muzzle them with the muzzle of fire in the next life, in the Day of Judgment. It's important to remember as well that sometimes an individual might have to be silent for the greater good, right? For the greater good. What does that mean? So, for example, we might enter somewhere or be around people where a lot of things are happening. A lot of things are happening that need to be, people need to be warned about. Like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. You have to do like this, don't do that, right? Or pray like this, or, fast like this, or break your fast like this, whatever it might be, right? There are several things you might see that need to be addressed, okay? But you might, if you say something, right, they might not accept that at all. Or cause problems between the two of you, right? Or cause them to be even further from the religion. So example is imagine someone comes to Al-Rahma for the first time, right? And they don't pray properly. It's their very first time in Al-Rahma. The first thing someone says to them, so-and-so, you're praying wrong, pray like this. Right? Some people might accept that, but for many people, that might be too much too fast, okay? Too much too fast. So staying silent in a case where you're trying to, build a relationship with the individual to help them eventually. Or because you're overlooking this thing to help them with something greater. Okay? So for example, they might be praying wrong, but you want to help them overall become more pious or become close to Allah Ta'ala. In these cases, right, staying silent is not considered bad. It's considered wise. So sometimes staying silent is the wiser thing to do because there's an ultimate goal of building a stronger relationship with the individual and calling them to Allah Ta'ala in a better way. So staying silent out of wisdom, okay, is not a bad thing. Staying silent because you want to hide their religion from them or because you don't care is a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Okay? Yeah, go ahead, read.
It's not being said that the tongue of one's condition is even more eloquent than the tongue that speaks. Therefore, when he who has knowledge of the religion of God and is engaged in reminding others of his days and calling them to his path, looks at those who are ignorant of this knowledge, forgetful of the hereafter, and in earnest pursuit of this world, he has no option but to explain to them what rights God has upon them and what they need to do to align themselves into his obedience, confirm with his injunctions, and avoid sinning against him and committing what he has forbidden.
Yeah, so he's saying here now, as someone who has learned the religion of Allah Ta'ala, right, and is someone who is basically has taken from men of God, and is someone who is practicing what they've learned. If they see people transgressing the boundaries of Islam and Allah Ta'ala, in their heart, they'll have a feeling that carries them or pushes them to correct them and to help them. All right? Someone who is practicing on what they've learned about the religion of Allah Ta'ala, okay, those people will naturally have something in their heart, a sensation or a feeling where they will want to help others if they see wrong. What about the opposite, the other kind of people? He says, what does he say?
As for the neglectful scholars, overcome by their negligence and muddled states, that they care little for this, so much so that it so dumbness and neglect as well as their evil words and deeds. The only difference between them is the outward form of knowledge and its formalities, which show in their speech and external appearance. Those are neither leaders of guidance nor summoners to goodness, nor are they guides on the path to God, the formidable King. It may even happen that some of them will cause the common people and persist in words, the common people to wade even more deeply into their audacities and impertinence and persist in words and deeds that attract the wrath of God and his messenger. For when the common people observe those who are said to be people of knowledge and religion in being neglectful and careless in upholding the commands of God and fulfilling his obligations and being slow to obey him, it may encourage them to neglect and flout matters of religion, perhaps even fall into major sins and crimes. Thus will such scholars have become summoners to evil and leaders into error, whether in full awareness or not. We ask God protection against revision and inversion, and we ask him for safety from every fearful thing and every calamity for us, our loved ones, and all Muslims. The end belongs to those who are God-fearing, and hostility is directed solely against the wrongdoers.
Now he's saying people who have learned about the religion of God, but are coming short. What does coming short mean? They're not practicing what they've been taught, right? These people don't have this feeling in their heart, right? They've been taught, they don't practice, they see someone doing wrong. There's nothing in their heart that pushes them or makes them want to correct that person, okay? In fact, there's no difference between them and the person committing wrong at all, because in both cases, both people are not practicing what they've been learned, right? The scholar here was taught, is not practicing. That person is not practicing and just wasn't taught. The only difference is that the scholar might be, outwardly looking like someone who's a man of knowledge and in religion, right? Maybe the way he dresses, the way his beard is, the way his turban is, or something like that, right? But in practice and their actions, there's no difference between the two of them, okay? And he has no feeling in his heart to correct others and to call them to that which is good. In fact, he's saying sometimes these people, these scholars, these learned individuals who aren't practicing their religion, they cause more harm. And they teach others that it's okay, right, to do bad things. How is that? These people, right, they've learned a little bit, right? And outwardly, people recognize they've learned because of the way they dress, right? So these scholars who have learned but aren't practicing, they might still dress like scholars and callers to God, right? People look at them and see these people, wow, they're scholars and they're callers to God, okay? And they see their behavior, that they're doing certain things that aren't permissible, okay? Now, they're just ignorant masses, right? They'll just think to themselves, oh, if he's doing this, and he looks like someone who is, who's learned, someone that we should be emulating, he is doing it, we can do it too. And they'll start doing that bad thing as well. So imagine someone who's learned their religion, right, is a caller to God or a scholar, and they look at, for example, things that are haram on their phone, okay? And someone of just, the lay people sees that person looking at these things on their phone. What are they going to think? Well, if he's doing it, I can do it too, right? Right? And so this person, the scholar, becomes someone who spreads evil amongst people, right? Even though he's learned, his lack of practice, right, is being emulated by individuals. They'll think that it's okay because he's doing it, right? They'll think it's absolutely okay because he's doing it and he's someone that they have taken as a guide or someone to emulate. Okay? And that's what he means when he says that, right? These people are learned and they become a reason for people committing great sins, right? One, because they don't correct others if they see them doing wrong, but number two, because they also are doing things themselves that are wrong. People see that, emulate it, and so just like that, sinning and becomes rampant in the society, and people think it's normal to do these things. Okay, so with that, we'll close for today and we'll resume tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah ta'ala to make us of the scholars who learn this religion and practice it and spread it all over the lands. We ask Allah ta'ala to give us beneficial knowledge and give us tawfiq to practice it and accept our actions. Give us tawfiq to spread all over the world and to guide others to Islam, to make us, the Prophet happy with us, to reward our teachers, our shuyukh, and all those who have rights upon us with the Hadrat al-Nabi.